Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yes in your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and I'm really honored to be here today with Brittany Everly.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for reaching out. Your story is such an important one for women to hear, and we will dive right in. But Brittany is a cancer and infertility survivor. Your story is incredible and packed full of strength and perseverance and everything in between. And I know there are so many women out there also struggling with these types of topics, and talking about it is so important because it gives women the feeling that they're not alone in what they struggle with. It gives them the strength. So I know today is hard to talk about, but I promise I will take good care of you.
Thank you. I've never shared this story like publicly like this. I've shared it many times and with anyone that has ever known me or talked to me about anything, but I've never just shared it publicly. So never even on my social media.
Yeah. Wow.
I just announced that we were having a baby, but I've never put anything out there about my cancer. I've never put anything out there about the baby. I don't know. I just held everything close to the heart.
Yeah, I totally get that and respect that. And I'm honored that you reached out. And as you continue to explore, the fact that you're here and that you can be an advocate or what what this purpose is for you, I'm honored to be a launching pad for that. And, I hope you give yourself all the grace in this conversation because it's a hard one to talk about. And if this is your first time talking about it, I know everyone listening will give you all the grace, but I have a feeling today is going to go swimmingly. It's going to be just fine.
I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Okay. So for those of you who listen and watch the show, I like to start off every show with an intention, and it keeps us kind of grounded in what we're here to do because Lord knows I like to take us on tangents. But also for those listening to just kind of put their eyes and ears and hearts and minds in the right spot. And I had this like eloquent long one, but as we were talking pre-show, it just boiled down to just keep going.
Yes. Just every day by day, step by step.
Yep. Just keep going. So for anyone out there, no matter what you're struggling with, whether it be cancer, infertility, or anything else, big or small, just keep going. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Let me start us off with a little intro that I wrote, and then we're going to dive right in. I'm going to put my hot water down because I'm a little old lady and drink hot water all day long. Brittany Everly is a Cincinnati native, a former lawyer, entrepreneur, married to her husband, Nick, as well as a cancer and infertility survivor. Here's what Brittany shared with me when she asked to be on the show to help other women. Nick and I were engaged in June of 2015 and set to be married April 30th, 2016. But in October of 2015, I was diagnosed with melanoma. In January of 2016, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. It had spread to my liver and my lungs. I was given one shot from my oncologist at the James Hospital to do an egg retrieval. We were lucky and got 33 eggs. I went through 3 years of treatment, chemo, radiation, surgeries, and more. I was on chemo when I got married. We were in the hospital Monday after our wedding. Despite the odds, I am still here. Mm-hmm. Long story short, I cannot get pregnant. Chemo and radiation set me into menopause at age 30. We have not had an easy journey to becoming parents. We have worked with 2 amazing gestational carriers. We've worked with an agency. We've worked with attorneys and psychologists. We've had a miscarriage with 1 carrier and embryo transfers that have not taken. We've been told by our fertility clinic in Columbus there was nothing they could do because they failed us with my 33 eggs. Now, 9 years after being diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, I had my 5-year doctor check, and our dream come true is being born in the beginning of March. Brittany feels called to share her journey for the sake of helping other women. I'm honored to be the beginning of figuring out what that means to share. I promise to take good care of you and your story today. Thank you for being brave enough to show up and share. You have no idea how many women you are about to help be brave in their own way. So
here we go.
Okay. Oh, I just got goosebumps. Okay. Cancer conversations. I have them in little buckets. So let's talk about the cancer.
Okay.
Can you share a bit about your life before diagnosis? Like, do you feel like when you got the diagnosis, there was sort of like the before Brittany and the after Brittany? And like, what was life like?
That's so funny because I was actually just talking to my husband about this. I don't remember life before all of this. And I don't mean that in any sort of way. It's just like to explain who I was then and who I am now. I don't know how I would distinguish between the two. However, I will say that like I grew up with this very, very happy, like very no worries childhood. I worked really, really hard. I, always held myself up to this high standard. I went on to college. I went on to law school. I had huge dreams as far as, what I was going to do with that law degree. We were like Nick and I, we were going a mile a minute when this diagnosis came in.
Yeah.
At the time, Nick was in neurosurgery residency. I was a practicing attorney in Franklin County at the prosecutor's office. I was so busy, and like my whole heart and my whole mind was always going a mile a minute. We had bought a house. We were planning a wedding. I mean, I was just that girl that did it. I did everything, and I just like kept going. Like, I don't think, I was moving fast when I didn't even realize I was moving fast. Yeah. And I look back, and I think that's one thing that when I do like try to think of like Brittany before now and Brittany after that, I think the two big things is I went so fast all the time that I don't think I enjoyed or embraced each moment of every day. And now I definitely have that perspective that I do keep that in mind. But I also think that the realities of that life can be hard hit so hard because I didn't have that perspective whatsoever. I actually, I think there was a guy I was dating like one time in college, and I was talking to him at one point during law school, and he made the comment like, you used to only see butterflies and rainbows. And in law school, he thought it had started to kind of change me because I was reading these cases. I was, arguing with people. Yeah. So then now I could only imagine what people think, because who I was back then was just this like bubbly, lighthearted person that had nothing heavy. I really didn't. And so then you get to hear, and I think that's a big thing that has changed.
Yeah. And that is so fair and so honest. It's really hard. That's one of the harder things about as we grow older, we experience more things, and it's hard to keep that innocence and joy and sunshine and rainbows that, we are born with as children. And
right. So, I was a prosecuting attorney, so I was talking about the horrible cases.
Totally.
And then I had this cancer stuff come on. So I just think it got heavy. It got really heavy and really dark, really quick. So that's what I've been trying to take back, is that lightheartedness.
Yeah. Yes, which we are going to get into, because we talked about a little bit about this in my kitchen over coffee, and I love this. I know. I feel like I should live mic.
You should. As soon as someone walks in, you should just start talking.
I know,
or miking, because it was. We got into it.
Yeah, we did. But I promise we'll get right back into it. Would you like to share a little bit about the diagnosis and sort of like what that was like? Because I think it kind of, one of the key themes that you and I had talked about that's really important for people to take away when talking about your cancer story is self-advocacy. Yes. So we're going to hit that in just a couple of different ways, many different ways. But I thought, you sharing your diagnosis story with me really hit for like, thank God you continue to ask the questions. Definitely. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I was 28 when I was diagnosed. So I was a prosecuting attorney. So I think it was Martin Luther King or President's Day, Martin Luther King Day. I had that day off, and I woke up because a couple doctors had told me throughout the past few years that I had a hernia, and so just to keep an eye on it in case anything started showing up, like different symptoms. So I called randomly. I woke up on this day. I called randomly to a primary care doctor. I didn't even have one in Columbus. And I called and I just said, hey, like I'm trying to get in to get this hernia checked. And they said, can you be here in 30 minutes? A huge thing, right? How many times does that happen?
No, usually like, can you be here in 9 weeks?
9 weeks, exactly. Yeah. So my mom was coming up to hang out with me for the day. So I called her and I said, hey, I'm throwing on some clothes. I'm going to run over to this doctor. I just want to get this checked before, wedding stuff really gears up. Because I was getting married in April and it was January. So I go in. Long story. I'm trying to keep this story short. So I go in and I talk to the doctor, tell him my symptoms. He's like, yeah, you definitely probably have a strangulated hernia. So that what that'll mean is you'll have to get an x-ray, and then it'll probably just be a simple surgery. Well, of course, bride to be here just starts crying, thinking like, oh my gosh, I have showers. I have last minute wedding planning. I have my wedding, and now I'm going to try to squeeze in a surgery at this point. So I went for the x-ray, and surprisingly, nothing came back about a hernia. I didn't even have a hernia. So then it was like, okay, why are you having these different symptoms? So they kept sending me for different tests. Ultimately, that led to me being sent to a GI doctor in Columbus. That's where my husband and I were living my fiance and I were living at the time. So I went to a GI doctor and I walk in. He's asking me, I'm a type 1 diabetic as well. I was diagnosed with that when I was 12. And so he's asking me some questions about that. And things were a little, he wasn't completely saying things about how my experience with diabetes has been. And that's very normal.
Yeah. You guys just like that chemistry like wasn't there,
no,
right?
It wasn't there.
Yeah.
So then
having a doctor is like dating. You're like, either we're going to click or we're not. Totally.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And I can honestly, I'll get to that when I talk about my oncologist and my surgeon at OSU, the James. I mean, love them. I still today will just sing their praises because they have just been incredible.
Yeah.
But anyways, we weren't vibing. Me and this doctor were not vibing.
Yeah.
And the next thing he says after I tell him my symptoms is that it sounds like cancer. And, you know, of course, I'm 28. That's like a gut punch. But I'm also like, I mean, this is a very, I don't know what the right word would be, but very confident, you know, outspoken me.
And like type A, you're like, no, my life is under control. I have everything lined up. I have a shower in 3 weeks and there's no time for cancer.
There's no time for this.
That's not on the plan.
That's not there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you haven't had any test. You haven't looked at anything. You just heard my symptoms and you're going to throw the cancer word out there. It completely turned me the wrong way. So I very confidently walked out of that doctor's office. My mom was with me. My dad was waiting out in the waiting room and we left. And, you know, you can't help. They made you fill out this form for a colonoscopy. So that was serious and you can't help but forget that word. But I'm also thinking this doctor has no idea what he's talking about. Like absolutely no idea. I'm not a medical professional, but that was like, you know,
you're like, you don't even understand my diabetes. How are you going to, you didn't even,
exactly.
I get it.
And so we went out to lunch, my parents and I, we went out to lunch and you know, the mood is down, but it was just kind of like, no, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, it's fine. So my parents had a doctor here in Cincinnati. This is where I'm from, that they felt confident and comfortable with. And so they called and that doctor was out of town, but his partner was available for me to see her in the next few days or like the next day or so. And so I came down to Cincinnati. We went over to that doctor. We're sitting in the office and, you know, of course, what's weighing on our minds is the cancer word.
Yeah.
So when we walk in, you know, I'm explaining to this doctor, like, I'm 28. This is what I have going on in my life. You know, I'm practicing attorney. My husband's my fiance's in residency. We just bought our first house. We're doing all these renovations. We're getting married in May. So I'm planning a wedding. And the doctor literally stops me in my tracks and is like, girl, you have IBS. Like, that is what's going on here. Like, you're just stressed galore and it's coming through physically. Like, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw you on some antibiotics. And then if that doesn't clear it up in the next couple months, we'll do a colonoscopy at that point. Well, again, that's when my personality, the advocacy point that I'm trying to make, but like my personality came out as like, no, don't tell me there's something next.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to wait and just see.
Right.
I was like, can I just do that colonoscopy now? And she laughed. Like, she literally laughed. And so my parents and I are just thinking, this is amazing. Like, this doctor does not think it's cancer. She thinks it's IBS. This is amazing. Like, we were just on cloud, like
totally over the
ecstatic.
moon. Yeah.
Yes. Ecstatic. This was like the best news we could hear. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. I want to do this colonoscopy. So we schedule it for the next couple days. As I'm being, you know, they put you in a gown, they kind of make you, they put you under.
Yeah.
She's rubbing my back and she's like, you know, we're going to do this test. You're going to leave here. You're going to be on antibiotics and you're going to go on your way. The only reason we're here is because you wanted this to happen. And those are like words that will always stick with me. And like, I always share with people because as I'm waking up from the anesthesia, I'm sitting in a room with my mom and my dad, and I'm being told it's cancer. I never thought I would be saying this to you. And my dad, I think it was my dad was like, well, how do you know it's cancer? Like, you know, and she's like, when you see it, you know, and this is cancer. So I had told my fiance to stay up in Columbus because I was like, you know, this doctor thinks I'm nuts for asking for this. Like, there's no reason for you to take off or come down. And I was like, and so worst fiance move ever. Me, like, still coming back from being under anesthesia, I pull out my phone and I text Nick and I say, it's cancer. They're saying chemo and surgeries, maybe radiation. And that's all I said. So, pretty big bomb to drop.
That's a bomb.
But yeah, definitely he didn't deserve that. And I feel awful that I still did that. But that's, you know, my heart, like, I just wanted to reach out to him right that second. 100%. I was in this meeting. People are talking big words that I'm not getting. And I'm like trying to understand what's happening. So that's how the diagnosis, it was crazy. It was just a couple weeks and a lot happened. And I think I had a bridal shower within that time span of like starting testing and being diagnosed. So I remember like at that bridal shower, just everybody just being like, yeah, I'm going through testing, but you know, it's fine. Like, might be okay. Like, I don't know, you know, just being like very la-di-da, but
and then was it like, okay, code red, we're starting chemo straight away?
Very much so. But as much as I say that, so I get that diagnosis, like the next day, my dad had an appointment with a doctor that we knew from, I mean, he lived in the same neighborhood as us.
So Cincinnati.
Yes. But he had an appointment and it was something, my dad went to the appointment as he's sitting there with Dr. Bardish. I'll give him my dad was telling him what just had happened with me, and Dr. Bardish was so sweet. He called and got together a oncologist team for me in Cincinnati. And so literally, I think like the following day, which is wild that he was able to make that happen. And I will forever be grateful.
Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps.
Yeah. He put together this team, which was great because, you know, cancer is a big word, but there's all kinds of all kinds of cancer, like what that can mean, right?
Stages, severity,
outcomes, all of that. And so I knew nothing. All I knew was cancer. And I knew that this doctor who had told me I had cancer was like making a big deal about it so that it wasn't just something like no big deal, like what she saw, which, you know, was bad.
Yeah.
And so the following day I was able to go down and talk with this team. And that was the moment in which I was not able to be given a stage. I had a mark in my liver. And so with colon cancer, which is something I've learned, different cancers spread and your staging is based on where it spreads to.
Okay.
So I had a mark in my liver that if it had spread from my colon to my liver, that would mean it was stage 4.
Okay.
But if it wasn't liver, like if the spot in my liver wasn't cancer, which I guess there are like blood vessels that create different, I'm not a doctor, so please pardon me. But
of course.
like there's different reasons why there could be a mark on my liver. And so if this mark on my liver wasn't cancer, and the only reason we saw it was because I got scanned, then no big deal. But if it was cancer, then it would be stage 4. So I was able to kind of get the glimpse of what I was looking at, what the different stages meant, what the different outcomes. I mean, of course, they never tell you the worst outcomes, but like really in that without having a lot of information, I was just kind of able to get some questions answered.
Which is huge, because I feel like for those who I've witnessed go through the cancer journey, like the time between test results,
awful,
doctor's appointment, plan, retest, tweak plan, like chemo schedule. It just, time goes so painfully slowly. Yes. This is your life.
Because you're sitting on like needles, like what are they going to say? What are they going to say?
Yes.
And I also at that time, I'm trying to write like a little book, and I was reading back from excerpts that I wrote back in the day. And I had totally forgotten about this. And I'm so upset with myself that I forgot about this. At that appointment, I'll never forget my dad looking at the doctor and asking a simple question that was on all of our minds, but probably not at the head of like the most importance, is my dad asked the doctor, how long will it take for her to lose her hair? Because I was getting married in a couple months.
Oh my gosh.
And so my dad looked at the doctor and as he asked that question, and he turned straight to me and he said, I've already researched. I found like a place that has the most elegant, realistic wigs. And we will make this happen for you. And you do not worry. Like, but I mean, how amazing, like anyone that knows me knows that like I wanted to look like myself on my wedding day. I mean, all brides do, you know? So like the thought that, and I will forever, like that was like a love heartache question that my dad put out there for me. And I will like forever be grateful for that, because it was that moment. It was like, okay, well, I won't lose my hair.
Yeah.
And that's like a whole nother thing is like to talk about later, is like, that was one thing with my cancers. I never lost my hair. Wow. I was still stage 4, going through all treatments, not good, but I never lost my hair. And so that's something that I think a lot of people assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I just want to pause for a second. Like that, like how much your dad loves you and knows you and advocates for you in that moment. Like I can't imagine being a parent of a child going through cancer as well. But like Dads and daughters, I tell you, there's something really special there, and sounds like he takes.
He does. He's incredible. My mom's incredible. He's incredible.
Yeah.
I was very grateful to have them throughout this process. I mean, I didn't do an appointment alone the whole time.
Oh God, it's what a gift to not have to go through everything, you know, even one step of it without someone there, even just to be a listener, to be a note taker, to be a question asker, because I can only imagine, you know, all of us in that like super heightened state of like, pretty much I can imagine panic, massive fear, panic. It's hard to hear.
Right.
It's literally like there's a loud buzzing. Right. You know what I mean? Or a siren or something. It's like, it's hard to hear. It's hard to digest. So I'm so glad you had that.
And each person, I think that's also something for someone that is going through it or knows someone that's going through it. It's always nice to have another set of ears, because if something's bad said, which I heard a lot of bad for a lot of years, you sometimes can get focused on that. Yeah. So then you miss like the next 5 things that they say.
Totally.
So if you have more than one person in the room, that's one thing that's really great. Talking about how I can't imagine, now that I'm older and I'm also now taking a step outside of this, also now have a little baby on the way. It's like, I can't imagine what my parents went through. And I have an empathy now that I definitely didn't have as I was going through it, because it was also very frustrating at times, because as we're sitting here saying, like, you hear just like a glimpse. So I would go into an appointment and I would get 97, 98% really, really bad news.
Yeah.
And there would be like 0.5, like 1.5% of like something slightly good,
slightly hopish.
Yes. And we would walk out of the room and my mom or my dad would be like, oh gosh, did you hear what they said? Like, that's wonderful. And I'm like, did you listen to anything else in that appointment? Like where I was, I mean, now like they were bringing me hope where I was like down in the dumps,
yes.
you know?
Yes. And in reflection of that, how important do you think, I mean, I can imagine, and tell me if I misunderstood this, that would like sort of drive me nuts a little bit too.
Gosh, yes.
Cause you're like, hello, like they're telling me I literally have no hope, which I want to get into that story as well. But, and then for someone to be like, no, but it's totally going to be fine. You're like, great. Actually, I'm not fine. Like, but in hindsight, in retrospect, do you think that glimmer of hope was important in your healing?
100% important, but also 100% hard to hear in the moment.
Yeah.
Because you're digesting all these feelings and emotions that are scary and big and bad. And then it's like, oh my goodness, can you just please listen to like what I'm really going through right now? You know, which they were, right? They were. Course. But in the moment, it's like really hard. So I'm sure I snapped a few times, like when they would say like, are you kidding me? But
I know, but that's where we apply the grace.
Yes, but you
that's where we apply the grace.
But you definitely need those people in your life that are going to give you that hope and that encouragement to keep that step by step, day by day going.
Yeah. My best friend and I always talk about like, when we're going through a hard time, she's going through a particularly hard time with family and custody and things like that. And so I'm like, do you need me to listen or do you need me to like lift you up?
That's
because
awesome.
Sometimes you just, I mean, it took me 43 years to learn how to ask that question, but like coming in hot here, and so sometimes if I don't remember to, because this has been going on for quite some time, she's a warrior. And so it's hard to sit with her discomfort as her best friend, because I'm like, I just want her to feel better. And so you can like, I'll like cheer. And then I'm like, I can tell by her response, you just needed me to listen and validate her feelings. Right. And then I can just circle back. And then she's like, thank you. I'm like, on it. Like, sorry, I swung and missed on the first one, but that's all you can do.
I think that's like, for someone that knows someone going through something difficult, let alone something like cancer or infertility or any of those things, that's such an important way to approach them. Because I think there's different moments that sometimes I needed them to tell me the positive things, and sometimes I just needed to vent and be angry.
Yeah.
And for a while I was angry a lot. And so that probably came across to some of my friends and some of my family as like not the most pleasant person to be around, but it was just like what I was dealing with at the moment. So I'm very grateful that for people that were able to see that, and for people that still love me today that, dealt with that back then, aka my husband. But, I just think that that's really an important way to approach someone that's going through something tough.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I think also you have to, like you said, you have to approach it with 100% empathy and realize that what do they need, and just to hold space, because you know that like you in your darkest hour is not the real whole picture of you. Right?
And I'm trying to find or give myself grace with that today.
Yeah.
Because I look back on like how I handled things. And although I am very proud and I think I did very well, and I mean, I'm still here and I did everything and I fought tooth and nail to get to where I am today. I'm trying to give myself grace on those moments when I look back and I was like, oh, I could have handled that a little nicer, or I could have handled that a little better. Or why was I so stuck on something so minor? Because it's just something I got lost in, you know, it's like just life was hard. So I became hard at times.
Yeah. You know, it's for all women listening and men too. Like, I think all of us have those moments, cancer or not, every day. I could have done this better. I could have handled this better. And like, you know, we're just kind of all coded to be this best, perfect version of ourselves. But I have done this new thing where like, and I'm so excited for your baby on the way. Like now when I'm beating myself up, I'm like, what would I say if my daughter or my sons were saying this out loud about themselves?
Yeah, that's huge.
And I'm like, oh, I would stop that real fast. I'm like, okay, I need to rewind and rewrite and apply the grace. So and you were in your darkest hour. So yes.
Yeah. And I actually I've been talking with someone who's going through it right now. And that's one thing I've said to them is that there are going to be days that you just lose it for no reason and you have no idea why. I mean, there's a whole hormonal side of all of this that especially for females, that's something that no one talks to. No one talked to me about any of it in the hospital. I had no idea it was happening.
Oh my gosh.
And it's huge for females. And I'm sure it's huge for men too. I just don't have as much personal experience on the men's side. But that was something that I definitely am sharing with people now and being more vocal about now, because I bet that was sometimes where I thought my emotions were big and I was not I understood why, but I wasn't really getting it, the real why.
Yeah. Like there was science why.
The science why. Exactly. Thank you. That's a good way to put it. I wasn't getting that. And so now I look back and I get frustrated because I'm like, why wasn't I made aware of that? And that's one thing I try to tell people that are going through things now is just be aware your body's going to change and go through things that you may not be focusing on because you're focusing on this big fight, totally cancer, fix it, get better, survive. Yes. And so all these other things that are happening, but affecting your day to day, there's not as much emphasis put on that, but it really affects you as you're going through your treatment, your life, because life's still happening, right? Life's still happening.
Right. There's a lot of life in between appointments.
Oh, so many.
Wow.
And mine was 3 years. So a lot of life.
Yes.
And now I look back and I really am trying to give myself grace on different things because it was just you didn't know what was going on. You were dealing with so much and you didn't even realize what you were dealing with.
Did you have to push back your wedding date or were you able to?
No. So that is something that it never crossed my mind and no one ever approached me about it. But I did find out that I think my mom and my fiance talked about it. And I think it was my fiance saying that Brittany's heart would just be devastated. It would be broken.
You were so looking forward to that.
Yeah. And I'm sure my mom and my dad were on the same page that date, that date's going to come and go. And so how sad would that day be if I wasn't getting married? And
I just got goosebumps again.
Yeah. So no, we got married on April 30th. That was our set date. And we had this big fun wedding planned. And, so I had my chemo. I would do a week on of chemo and a week off. And so my week on would be a full day of an infusion at the James Hospital. So I'd sit there attached to things. I also would do 8 pills of chemo that day as well. And then every day for the next week, I would do 8 pills of chemo. And so
God, that feels like a lot.
It was a lot. It was, but there was a reason it was a lot, you know?
Yeah.
So I would have a week on, which would be a bad week. And then I would have a good week where, I was feeling better because I wasn't directly taking the chemo. So, some side effects would linger, but I would feel a little better. So my oncologist, Dr. John Hayes, love him. I just got to see him a couple weeks ago or last week maybe. But he was so sweet that we had our wedding date. So he planned in my treatment, because I'd already started my treatment when we got married, that my wedding would be at the end of a good week.
I love that.
Yes. So I was able to stay up till 3 a.m. with everyone and have fun. And I truly acted as if nothing was wrong. So that whole Saturday was so much fun. Monday morning, we were back at the James Hospital getting an infusion.
Oh my God. You are a warrior.
It was fun. The nurses at the James had decorated my room and put little signs and cards everywhere saying happy wedding, congratulations. And, then my husband and I buzzed off to Florida like 2 days later. My parents have a house down there.
Yeah.
And so we buzzed down there, and that's where we had our little honeymoon. And I was on chemo every day, but we just got away.
Right. Got away. For those doctors and nurses, and like they see so much that like life exists outside of the treatment they provide, and like to just hear their compassion and all the effort that they went in to help you maintain life as you had planned it is just, that really, really, really warms my heart. Hey, busy moms and aspiring entrepreneurs. If you want to learn how to build a high-income business in just 20 hours a week so you can enjoy more time with your kids, all while transforming yourself from overwhelmed to confident in just 90 days, then you need to check out my masterclass. I'm Betsy, a busy mom of 4 and a business coach obsessed with helping women just like you build thriving businesses that fit your life, not the other way around. After 20 years in marketing and building my own nonprofit and e-commerce business, I know exactly what it takes to go from overwhelmed to empowered. That's why I created my self-paced digital masterclass designed to help you move forward with clarity and confidence. So whether you're starting from scratch or recalibrating an existing business, my masterclass will take you from stuck and overwhelmed to simplified, organized, confident, and clear in your next steps. If you want to learn things like how to create a successful business that aligns with your personal life and brings you happiness, if you want to learn how to acquire the confidence and strategies needed to overcome self-doubt and thrive in your entrepreneurial journey, if you want to obtain the knowledge and tools to take control of your business finances with confidence, if you want to gain essential skills and strategies to effectively promote your business with confidence and ease, and if you want to discover practical strategies and systems to manage the challenges of entrepreneurship, then you should absolutely check out the 5-section self-paced digital masterclass from the Female Founders Academy. It's just $597, plus every course comes with free worksheets to guide you through. Learn on your own time, at your own pace, in the privacy of your home. So if you want to learn how to build a high-income business in just 20 hours a week so you can enjoy more time with your kids, all while transforming yourself from overwhelmed to confident in just 90 days, then visit writeyourownsstory.co/FFA-courses or click the link in the show notes below. As I wanted to cover one thing that you and I talked offline, and it relates to self-advocacy and your diagnosis. So when we had talked about the liver spot, and you had mentioned you had doctors in Cincinnati, and I know you also had doctors in Columbus. Can you talk a bit when they were like, okay, here's your outlook and sort of how you managed that? Because that was a wild story. Outlet where they were like, basically, from what I understand, they were like, you're going to head to palliative care immediately.
Okay. Yeah. So I ended up getting a liver biopsy. It comes back that it is cancer. So it's stage 4. So it's stage 4. So I go to the James for my first appointment there, and I only have nothing but amazing things to say about the James. So I don't want this to come across as any sort of dig at the James, because I think that it's an incredible hospital.
Yeah.
But my first appointment at the James was with a fellow, which with medical training, you go to medical school, and then you go to residency, and then you can become a fellow, and then you become an attending. Mm-hmm. So a fellow, it wasn't one of the attendings, it was a fellow. And so I walk into the room, and it's me, my dad, my mom, and my fiance, and we're sitting there. And the first thing that the guy says to me is that, with the location of where my tumor is and how it's spread, all they can do is keep me comfortable, and it'll be palliative care. And I'm butchering his words in a roundabout way.
I can imagine you don't remember them verbatim. They must have just...
I did for a long time, but I think I've blacked that out. And that is something interesting, funny you say that, because I have blacked out different parts of this journey. Mm-hmm. And I was really grateful before I was coming in to talk to you. And I think I mentioned this to you, that I have had, I've wanted to write a book about all of this, and I haven't really, but during the process, I wrote little snippets about things that I was going through. And so that kind of has refreshed my memory on a lot of different things that I've blacked out. But mm-hmm. that is one thing that I don't remember his exact words. I just remember what he said. I remember my mom, everyone in the room, collapsing and crying. And I don't know why, but I sat there, and I just was very calm. And I don't know if that's like the difference too, is like, I'm very empathetic for people now. Like, I think it was probably easier for me going through this because it was me, right? And it's like my mom, my dad, my fiance, those closest to me, like they couldn't do anything. Like they were just sitting next to me by my side, but like there was nothing they could really do. Right. And so I think it probably was easier on me at times, but I sat there and I, with full clarity, just looked at the man and I just said, you know, have you looked at every test, every scan, everything that I've had done? And if you haven't, I would please ask you, like, please step out of the room, go look at it all again, make sure you've like got everything correctly. If you come back in and after you've done that, like 100%, this is still your opinion, then, you know, we'll move forward with that. But I said, like, please just give it a moment, like go take another look. Cause we had met with those doctors in Cincinnati and they had never said like palliative care. They had never said there was nothing we could do. I mean, I was very sure it was going to be a heck of a journey, but they had never said that. So he like walked out and he came back in. I mean, I'd be totally making up a number if it was 20 minutes, if it was an hour, I have no idea. It just seemed like an eternity. Yes. And he came back in and he was like, you're right. If it would have been like the slightest way, I don't know which direction we would be looking at palliative care, but you're lucky that we'll try the chemo and the radiation and surgeries and all of it.
So you literally would have been hooked up to palliative care, not hooked up, like you're hooked up to a machine, but you know, like started the palliative care process if you hadn't said, can you take another look?
I don't want to give myself that much credit. I mean, I believe that I believe that another doctor would have stepped in.
I'm sure you've gotten like, more opinions.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And so the next doctor that came in was able to be like, you're right. Like, not that I'm right. I was not right. I just like,
you were right to ask.
I was right to ask. Right. So it was just maybe something I just had, I don't know. I had a lot of God winks and a lot of God moments throughout this, and like, not to get super spiritual or religious, but it's like, that was probably one of them. It was like, just that clean, just clear, just like, no, just ask that question.
Isn't that like when you have those moments, I think about this so much. I'm not a man, so I don't know if this applies, but as a woman, when you are able to connect to your intuition, it is exactly as you describe it. It is like, it is so calm. It is so clear. Right. The words are just coming out of your mouth kind of thing, where you're like, no, I know that I just need to ask this question.
Yeah. Like, I have no idea why I asked that.
Right.
I have no idea.
Right. You were just told to go up that there was no chance of survival.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, you know what, actually, can you go back and look? Also, like, as we know in the hospital world, like these are scheduled in like 20-minute increments. Right. Like, and you're like, no, I need you to just take a whole beat
another
here.
Second.
Yeah.
Like, yes, please.
And he did.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I think that was like a give me goosebumps story about self-advocacy. Like, I know that you probably would have continued to push against it, but that is like, I mean, talk about like a pivotal moment in your journey.
Right. Right. I think it was also a very, like, awakening moment that is like, oh man, we're really talking like, this is serious. Like, this is serious. You know, like, again, cancer can be a wide range of things. I had already had melanoma, but they cut it out and I went on with life and it was fine. Yeah. So it was like, this was that moment where like, oh no, this is like serious. Like, this is serious.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, what is it like to go through chemo? Like, what does it feel like? What is it like to sit there with the infusion chair for anyone who might have just been diagnosed and is about to dive into it? And I know everyone's dosing and treatment is different, but do you mind sharing a little bit about what that was like for you?
Yeah. To start, exactly. Everybody's experience is very different. Okay. And so I don't want to speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself. Yeah. That it is it's such a mix of such a physical, emotional, and mental just fight. And the chemo itself, like, you know, you sit, when I would have my infusions, I would sit in the room in the James, and my chemo, all chemos are different, which is so crazy, which also so cool that medicine has gotten so far that there's different chemos that they use to fight different things, where there used to just be a blanket chemo. Yeah. But now, like, colon cancer chemo doesn't make you lose your hair. It just each one has their own specific chemos that they use. But my chemo burned when it went in. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm a type 1 diabetic and I was also getting married. The doctors didn't want to give me a port.
Oh, because for your dress.
Well, yes, for me personally, it was for my dress, because my dress was off the shoulders. Yeah. But for the doctors, I was also, like I said, a type 1 diabetic. So infections can come quicker. Okay. And with your numbers going high, low because of the different chemo and treatments you're going, that was a risk. And so they didn't want me to fight another infection while I'm fighting cancer. 100%. So that, I mean, I'm probably butchering that a little bit, but that was a big thing for them, is like, you know, this is something to consider as a type 1 diabetic. Not saying that type 1 diabetics can't get a port, but that was something that we talked about. As far as giving it to me as an option to have a port or not. The other thing is I had already picked out my 2 dresses I was going to wear at my wedding. Like
2 dresses.
I did.
I love this.
You know, that's very, I mean,
no judgment. I just want to know the details on both.
My gown for the ceremony was much bigger. It had like this very long train. It was very, you know,
very bridal.
It was very bridal.
I love that. Was it strapless? Did it have sleeves?
It was off the shoulder. It was very timeless, very classic. I still to this day love that dress. But that was like what I wanted when I was looking for a dress, but it was just off the shoulder. It was form fitting, but then it had this huge, I don't know what you would call it, but huge train that just like went, it was awesome. But my parents, again, knowing me, said, well, how are you going to dance at your reception in that? And it was, again, they know me so well. I love to dance. So they were like, you're going to need something lighter for there. So I wore a very similar dress, but it didn't have a train and it was much lighter. So anyways, the other thing too is this is something I didn't realize. And, you know, looking back, a port would have been easier. I had a lot of issues with my veins. I had to get ultrasound guided IVs all the time. Which I
you're like Fiona the hippo.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, not to equate your cancer journey to a dying baby hippo. That. But that was like, you know, they do that with babies all the time. And that's what saved the hippo's life. Is that they use the ultrasound technology.
But they could never find my veins. If they did find my veins, it would bust, or they would not be able to, it was awful. So
this is a dumb question, but is the vein stuff related to diabetics? I just don't know.
I don't think so, but I also don't know. I've never asked that question. I've just been told some people have good veins and some people have bad veins. Today, my veins are perfectly fine. So I have no idea where this all came from.
But regardless, that sounds like a really painful.
Oh, it was awful. I sometimes dreaded that more than the actual chemo itself.
I get it.
Because I would be getting poked a couple different times. I would have to wait for it just became a thing. But the port also, now looking back, I'm very grateful that I didn't have a port, because when I was feeling good, I could look in the mirror and I looked like me. And so I wasn't every day looking in the mirror and looking at myself and thinking I'm going through cancer, which I know not everybody has that option. And some people, you know, the hair, all the different things that can come from different cancers. I realized I was very lucky in that element, that I looked like myself as I went through cancer. And I truly did. And I didn't have a port, and I didn't have, like, I had my hair. So that was something that definitely lifted me up on my good days, is like, I don't want to say I ever forgot it, especially when I was going through it, but it was like, oh, I look good. I look like me. And I could go
probably
out.
Felt like just one semblance of normal.
Yes.
When life feels completely abnormal.
Exactly. I could dress, I could do whatever. I looked like me. I felt like me, minus, you know, a couple of different side effects.
Did you you know, I see some people on cancer, like on chemo, that like lose a ton of weight or like become very gaunt, or like, did you have physical symptoms with that?
I mean, I did lose weight, but I don't want to say that I like looked skeleton. I mean, I guess there were moments that I did, like different times. Like there was a time where I got an infection, and, you know, and the weeks of chemo, I'm sure I didn't look healthy. I think that's probably the best way to put it. I sometimes didn't look healthy. I looked tired, drained. My skin wasn't, you know, things like that. I mean, I was pumping poison into my body every day. So like, you know, I definitely, but I feel like I looked like me.
I'm sure you did.
And I look like back on pictures, and I'm like, I did look like me. And as much as that was a huge positive thing for me, it's interesting how, and this is something that, you know, is another takeaway for anyone that's listening, is you never know what someone's going through. And so,
amen to that.
Yeah. And so people would look at me, even people that knew I was going through cancer. I'll never forget, there was a lady that I worked with who I thought was a friend. And actually, she made the comment to someone one time, you know, she hasn't lost her hair and she's doing all this traveling. Like she can't be that sick, so she can't come to work, but she can go travel. And it really crushed me, because it was that moment of like, wow, you really don't realize how bad it is. Like,
can you share how bad it was? Like, so palliative care, you're stage 4, like truly, even when they're like, there are options, like, did you get a percentage of survival? Like,
I never Googled it. I've now Googled it, and it's really, really, really low. Yeah. And that's like, you know, the 5-year mark that I was talking to you about. Yes. Like, I'm kind of jumping off of that story. And I think that's an important, I'm going to go back to that story real quick because I don't want to forget. That's such an important thing that you can't judge someone on how they handle something.
Yes.
Because how my husband and I, fiance, husband, whatever we were at the time, how we handled it was we really had a lot of fun on the weekends that I was feeling good. And did that mean amazing. That like I was going out and having like wine? Maybe I would have a glass of wine, maybe I wouldn't, but we traveled and we went to concerts and we did things because, as you said earlier, like life still happens during all of this. Mm-hmm. And these were days we were never going to get back. Yes. And so like, for me, I needed that like uplifting fun times. I'm a very social person. And so I needed that. Like, mm-hmm. that was how I got through my like dark days. And I wanted, like, when I heard that this person had said that, I like wanted to say like, do you want to come over to my house like mm-hmm. next week right. when I can't get out of bed and I'm sleeping for like 2 days straight and I can't eat. I like, I'm asleep for like a day and a half. Like I can't get like, do you want to see right. all that?
Gravely sick.
Like, no, I'm not posting any of that on social media right. because that's intimate. I'm not sharing it. And maybe I should have. Nope. Sometimes I wish I should have.
But if you didn't want to, then you shouldn't have.
Right. Exactly. And so it's like one of those things. It's like, just don't judge people by what they're doing or how they're handling a situation because you really don't know. Unless you're like firsthand, please just don't.
And like that applies to all moments of life, right?
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's like, I think it's huge. And I think that's definitely a perspective that it's given me moving forward in my life is that everybody's going to do what makes them happy and what they need to do for their own life. And like, be happy for them. Like that's all you can do is like, be happy for them. Be happy that they're happy. Be happy that they're getting through it. Be happy that they're figuring out how to handle a bad time in their life.
100%.
You know? So I forget what that other question was you asked me about.
I forget too, but I'm too into this story.
Yeah. Darn it. I think that was something I wanted to talk about too, but I was like, I don't want to forget about
Well, it was self-advocacy. And then I think it was the don't judge people based on how they handle it. Oh, yeah. I know. Percentage of survival rate. Yeah. And so Googling and not Googling.
Yeah. So I didn't Google. It was definitely something that I don't know. I think it was Nick. I think he had said like, just don't, like, why? Like, you know, like just why? I was 28 too. And so that was not common, like for a 28-year-old to be diagnosed with colon cancer, especially stage 4. And my oncologist had even said that to me. And I know what I was going into is so that when we started chatting in the beginning, I had said something about like, I have a 5-year doctor's appointment coming up. Mm-hmm. And that's so exciting because, you know, 5 years is that point that you want to get to as a colon cancer survivor. Like that's what you want to get to. That's huge. After that, they really say that you don't have to come back and all these different things. So I had been really focusing on this 5-year appointment that was coming up. And I finished chemo in 2019, in September of 2019. So your 5 years start then.
Okay.
So I did 1 whole year of chemo and radiation and surgery. So I did 3 months of chemo, 2 months of radiation. I did my big colon cancer surgery. And then I did 3 more months of chemo my first year. Yeah. And
sorry, being blinded by light right now. For anyone who's just listening, she's telling the story of being actually blinded from the window. Didn't I tell you that part of the process is that I'm going to torture you with light? I'm sorry.
So that was my first year of treatment. And of course there's time in between because you have to heal from different things before you can move on to the next step. And so then I had a year and then I ended up where we were doing scans and it wasn't even a full year, but then ultimately it came back that I had a spot in my lung that we had been watching. Uh-huh. And the doctors had told me that spot was there when I was originally diagnosed in January 2016. But the doctors had told me, which is not great for Ohioans, but in Southern Ohio, a lot of people have spots on their lungs. You just don't see it.
Why?
Because of our air quality.
Great.
And so you just don't see it because people don't get scanned.
Yeah.
But since I was getting scanned, we saw the spot on my lung. So we didn't know, is this cancer or is this just a spot from living in Southern Ohio? And so they were just going to monitor it. And so when we, I guess we're watching my scans after I had finished my treatment in, what was that, 2017, January 2017. We were just doing my scans every 3 months and we went in for an appointment. We thought things were good. And I say we, like me and my husband, we thought things were good. And my doctor was like, hey, we need to talk about this spot on your lungs. It's changed a little bit. And it was like, oh, okay. And he was like, no, like, I really think we should probably like check that out.
Like biopsy.
So we did, and it was cancer.
Awful.
Yeah. So the other thing was, and this is like another cool, I don't know, maybe God moment, but I had that spot on my liver. So I had done chemo and radiation before my surgery. And so then when they went in for the surgery, they cut, my colon and cut that out. But they also looked at my liver and they could not find the cancer. So it was really cool. Like, wow. I mean, it was very exciting at the moment because it was like, wow, the chemo and radiation really works, which was one huge, because I was very lucky chemo and radiation works on me. It doesn't work on everyone.
Yeah.
And so that's like a huge blessing that I am not trying to overlook, or, not everybody is that lucky that chemo works for them, and chemo worked for me. And so that was a good moment because it was like, okay, my body reacts to chemo. My body reacts to this radiation.
Yeah.
Like, this is good news. Like, this is good news. Let's take that as a win.
Yes. 100%.
So, but then that following year when we were just doing my scans, the spot on my liver started to come back, and my spot on my lungs had changed. Okay. So at that point but
colon wise, everything was still looking good.
Yeah. So everything was still looking good.
Okay.
So we did a biopsy of my lungs, and it came back that it was cancer. And so it had been cancer from the beginning, but we didn't know that back then. Yeah. I'm making myself feel better by saying like, that was always there. It didn't come back later. It was always there. But so then I did a liver ablation, which is when they burn a liver. So like I have a little hole in my liver. And then I ended up having lung surgery, where they were going to just take like a wedge out of my lung where the cancer was, but they ended up having to take the whole bottom lobe of I don't know what side it is, but my lung.
I don't either. Wait, so do you still have two lungs and one's just missing a bottom lobe?
Yeah. So I didn't know that.
Me either. That's why I'm like looking at you like, wait, what?
So I didn't know that. And I also like want to apologize if I speak incorrectly on this, because again, I'm not a medical professional, just going through life with all this different stuff. But my understanding is one side is like one big lobe and the other side is like two lobes.
Interesting.
Yeah. I, again, could be wrong, but I really think that that's how it was.
Because your guess is way better than mine, girl.
Because we're going to take just a section of my bottom lobe, but they ended up having to take the whole thing. So, that was an interesting surgery that I didn't
really hard to recover from.
Right. And I also didn't realize that that's a really scary surgery because of how many things can go wrong with your lungs being operated on, because if you stop breathing, obviously that affects your brain and 100%, your whole, whole body,
the whole shebang,
So that was like a whole thing in itself. But I went through all of that. And then the doctors had suggested that I do more chemo just to make sure it's all gone. And
especially since you responded so well previously.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Tracking.
So then that's like why I think, again, I think it's always important. And I would encourage anyone that I always was like, throw everything at me, like anything, everything. I want to do it all.
Yeah.
And I know how like someone that's in the middle of it, that could like, if it's you right now that you're going through this and it's so miserable and it's so tough and every aspect of your life is altered from this and you just don't want to do another day of it, just do it. Yeah. Like that's the best encouragement that I can give, is like, just do everything that the doctors say and like follow it bit by bit. I took every single pill. I like, even if I wanted to throw up as I was like swallowing these, like I just made them stay down. You know, it's like, you just have to get it all in there. And, so I finished in 2019. So then those 5 years start after you finish.
Goodness.
So it was sad because originally it would have been 17 would have been my end date. But then I had to restart in 2019.
Damn. Yeah. Okay. And so then you went in for this scan, and tell us about that. As you may know, Cincinnati Children's Hospital is near and dear to my heart. If you don't, check out the episode, A Story of Miracles, to be inspired. Not only did they save my daughter's life, but they've saved countless lives each and every day through their exceptional care, tireless research, and so much more. I wanted to find a creative way to not only support women, but to give back to the hospital I hold so dear. And I think I've come up with something really fun and exciting. Okay, I'm just going to shoot you straight here. One of the ways for a podcast to make money is for people to subscribe, aka contribute money to support the show. As exciting as a new way to make money is for me, I wanted to turn this into an opportunity for others. So if you choose to subscribe for as little as $3 a month, where you can can cancel at any time. You can submit a friend or a women-owned business to get a special shout out on the podcast. And half of your subscription money will go directly to Cincinnati Children's, supporting their needs in life-saving research and care. This feels amazing to me because everybody wins. Your bestie, your business, the hospital, and the show are all being supported through this effort. Click the support our show link in the show notes today to not only get a shout out, but to support the #1 pediatric hospital in the world.
Okay, so very exciting. And I have to start with the positive is that my scans are clear still to this day, which is amazing.
I have like full body chills for you.
Yes, thank you.
So amazing.
Same. It's like the biggest, the thing we want the most, right?
Yes.
That news every single year. However, which another thing that's amazing is medicine is always advancing and medicine is always doing more and bigger things, which is also incredible. And we are so lucky to have the medical system that we have here. And with that being said, is that I was told throughout my treatment that like that 5 years was big. But then when I went to my appointment this past week or 2 weeks ago, I was told that my scans are clear. Hallelujah. But the science is now showing, the studies are now showing that people with stage 4 colon cancer, although it's a huge positive, they're now surviving, which is again like that gut punch because it's like, wow, like that was like they're now surviving. So how lucky am I that I'm one of those people that have now survived?
I know, now being such a heavy
word. But that's such a heavy word, right? Like, because I don't think I like totally grasped that as I was going through it. But stage 4 colon cancer survivors are now survivors and they are surviving. However, it can still, I guess studies have shown that it can pop up later. And so I have to do they're saying now like they want to monitor me 10 years out. So that would be another 5 years. So I'm not even going to hold on to that next 5 years and that 10-year mark because, hopefully every year I get that amazing news back and I'm not going to care if studies show that in 25, I have to I'll go for scans all the time. And honestly, before walking into that appointment, Nick and I had already had some conversations and he was like, Britt, like I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable with you not getting scanned. Like, let's just be careful and like, let's just get you scanned. So I think we went into that appointment thinking we're going to have to talk our doctor into letting me come back and get these scans. And then when he told me that like, I have to come back to get these scans, it was such a letdown, but in reality, that's what I wanted.
I know, but you're like, but it was my plan and now it's your plan and it feels so good when it's my plan.
Right. So it was just like, it was very much a weird moment because it's like, you're so grateful for the advances in medicine. You're so grateful to still be here and get that great news. But it was also such a letdown to be told like, nope, you're not just skating on with life and forgetting that cancer was, or is still a conversation in your every year.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's another thing when I talk to people that are in the middle of it. It's like, it's really hard to go about your day to day. It's really hard to go about those 3-month scans. And then they push them back to 6-month scans. And then they push them back to a year. But it's like, just one day at a time, you got this, you can do this. That's something that my surgeon at the James, he was like, he was the most well-dressed surgeon. And I was like getting bad news all the time. Like that was in the beginning, in that moment.
Yeah.
And then, I met with this surgeon and he was the first ounce of hope I had in this whole journey.
Yeah.
Because he looked at me, everybody else was telling me like all this bad news. And he walked in these loafers and this, tailored suit and like, I fell in love with him.
Right. Looks so sharp.
Right. He was so sharp. He was so sweet. He was so like confident and borderline arrogant, but in the most positive way.
As surgeon should
be.
As
I want my surgeon to be.
Absolutely.
And he looked at me and he was like, I got this. And as soon as he said that, that's become my line for anyone that's going through anything is always like, you got this.
You got this.
Because that line to me, like, it was like a snap. And like, I walked out of that room and it was me and my mom, my dad, and my husband, my husband, of course, the crew, the Brit team Brit is like kind of what they started calling themselves.
So
and we walked out and I was like, hey, Nick, I'm really sorry, but I think I have a crush on that man.
I think I'm actually in love with him too.
Right.
It's complicated. And we'll get married. We are married, but FYI.
Yeah. But Nick started laughing. He was like, yeah, me too.
I love it.
Because it was just like that moment that I needed. Like I needed that moment so much where someone was going to look at me and say like, I got this. You're in good hands. I have you. You're good. Like, and it was such a huge relief to hear that coming from someone that's in your field treating you.
Yes. I get that completely. 100%. And that moment where like you feel the whole energy shift from like,
it truly did.
Because when my daughter was sick in the NICU and, you know, we didn't know if she was going to make it or not, it was about a month-long process. And like, it was just heads down, think positive, fight hard, show up. And then for someone to finally be like, maybe there's hope. I've got you. Like, I see something. I just like, that was the moment actually where like I lost it.
I get that.
I lost it because you could put down all that fight for just a second.
Right.
And be like, I don't have to do this. I know you were never alone. Clearly you had Team Britt, you had amazing doctors, but for someone to be like, I can physically do something to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just what you needed to hear, you know, and I didn't want that false hope, but it was just like, no, he was like, I got this. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to cut it out. We're going to be good.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool. I like that.
You know, and that like, I mean, this is just a little bit of a tangent, but when I think about, I have been in the sidelines with people fighting cancer and like, or going through hard things. And that's one of the things that we had wanted to accomplish today was so many people just want to help and they don't know how to help and they don't know how to handle it. Just little moments where you can be like, I don't know, whether they come over and turn over your dishwasher and put something in the oven and you're, you know, swallowing your 8th pill, ready to puke it back up. And they're just like, I've got this.
Yeah.
You know, just those little moments to the surgeon who's literally going to save your life is like, I've got you. I've got this.
I've got you.
Those are really powerful statements when we all are looking how to care for each other in life.
Right. And that's huge. And, you know, it's really tough on what to tell people to how to help someone else. Because again, to your point earlier, the best thing is just to say like, what do you need? Like, how can I be there?
Yeah.
Always, in my personal opinion, I think it's always good to acknowledge what someone's going through because that gives them, you know, the clarity that it's a safe space, right? Like it's a safe space. Like they know you're where you're at. They know what you're going through. They're thinking of you, their heart's with you. And that's huge. Like
to be seen.
Yes. That's so huge. And to your point, just to give like that little glimpse of hope. But I also think it's back to like, you don't want to hear like, it's going to be okay. Cause no one knows if it's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's a interesting, tough journey and a lot of people are affected by it. And I think it's like one of those things that, that's one thing that I'm really trying to do right now is like, you know, someone that's in this different situations that I've been in, be able to be like someone that they can text or call at any time or meet for a drink or meet for coffee, because it's like, I've been there. I can like, I understand. Like I understand.
Literally.
And that was what was so hard. Like I didn't know anyone that had gone through.
Being 28.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had I didn't have that. So like, of course I had a crew around me, but I like didn't have someone, I was also lonely at times because it was like, no one understood what I was feeling, you know?
Don't you feel like you need almost like a mentor in that type of situation? Someone who's just walked that path before, even if it's a completely different type of cancer or whatever it may be. Or like I found that very helpful through the divorce process. Someone whose divorce ended in very different circumstances. You're just so like blinded by all of that you're trying to accomplish, stay alive, like rebuild your family, whatever, that you're like, can someone just be like a little beacon of like, there is a step forward.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like be that step forward. Also like that, how you're feeling is not crazy.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of times I felt crazy because it was like, why am I having these big emotions? Why am I feeling angry when right now is a good day? Or why am I like, you know, why am I thinking about the future when I just really need to get through these next couple weeks? You know, it's like all those big emotions. And it's, you know, I think it's really important to find that person, whatever you're going through, divorce, struggle with school, whatever you're in the middle of, just to realize like you're not alone. Someone's been there before and give them a little hope that like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still thriving. I'm still good, you know? So I think that's really important.
I think that I feel like I'm taking so many like giant, big nuggets away from this, whether it be as someone to support or to empathize with people who are going through it. So speaking of big emotions, you had mentioned before that it like completely changes your hormones.
Yeah.
Pivoting us into the infertility conversation, and we can go loop-de-loop round and round.
There's so
don't you worry. But but thinking about, you know, so you had mentioned when you reached out that it put you into menopause at 30. And so, and that your then fiance, now husband, had the wherewithal to be like, we need to.
Yeah. So Nick and I, when we were dating, we always joked that we would like have 5 kids. Like that was kind of like something we always would joke around about.
A neurosurgeon, a prosecutor.
He's now an ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Oh, nice. Solid move.
Yeah. So he stepped away from neurosurgery shortly after I was diagnosed.
Yeah.
And went into ENT. And honestly, that's a huge blessing that's come out of it. He loves what he does every day. He's really good at it. And it's a great like life balance. So it's been awesome.
Yeah.
But what were we talking
about?
Menopause.
I got you.
So, yeah. So I don't know. And I am so grateful to have had Nick because they never mentioned any of that. Like,
and did you have to do that before all the stuff started? Oh my God. So that even pushed back. You're like, I just want to start chemo so I can start to get healthy. And then you're like, let's pause for a second. Collect these. My God.
Yeah. And talk about like trying to think about something so in the future when you're here and now is like, I need to survive to get to that future. But, so it was very quick. So I was like diagnosed and like Nick said to me one day, he was like, you know what, we really need to go see your OBGYN. And me being me, I'm like, why? Like, why would I go? Why would I go over there?
And let's hope that's not broken.
Right. And he was like, no, like, I think we need to go talk to her because you're going to be going through all this stuff. Like, I know you want to have kids one day. Cause that has always been like one of my biggest dreams. Like I've always wanted to be an attorney, but I always have wanted to be a mom.
Just so called to be a mother.
Yes. That's something I've always wanted so bad. And he knew that. Like he very much knew that. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. And so he comes with me. We go meet my OBGYN who I loved. She's up in Columbus. And bless her heart, she called a fertility clinic up there right away. They got us in, which again, not easy to do. But I think when you put stage 4 colon cancer, 28-year-old female, they move quick.
Yeah.
And so Nick and I went and met with this fertility doctor next. And that meeting is still, I mean, if I were to look back on it, I'm kind of blurred. I remember talking to him. I remember telling him my story. I remember Nick doing a lot of talking for me because, you know, we're all still processing a very recent stage 4 colon cancer diagnosis, but yet we're trying to jump into this other big, heavy thing, like parenthood someday or like children someday.
And you're not even married yet.
We're not married yet. You know, it's like all these things. Yeah. And so we're sitting there and we're talking to this doctor and thankfully, again, I'm like so grateful that we did all of this, but we're sitting there and they start asking questions like, okay, well, we think we should create embryos with these eggs and we should do all of this. And, you know, those are just heavy emotional questions that like, you don't want to make an answer right at that moment. You know, Nick and I are both Catholic and we both have our feelings on all of this. And it was just like, this is too big. Like I want to create a family in the future, but like this is a big, heavy thing right now. So why don't we take a step back? Cause we're not in a place to really make a decision. Like we're really not. And let's just harvest eggs. So I did. I went through the treatment, like all the shots.
It's awful, isn't it? I did it too. Yeah.
I went through all the shots and went in and got my eggs harvested. My doctors at the James gave me one round, like you get one shot.
And then we got to get started.
And then we got to get started. Okay. So I think it was like a couple weeks. So they were able to like really quickly move me along on that process. And we were very thrilled and very excited that we got 33 eggs, which is a lot, you know, which was such a cool, exciting, positive thing in that moment. And it was kind of like a joke as we got closer to actually that being a realistic thing that we could possibly do. Nick would always be like, well, we don't have a timeline. Like your eggs are 28. Like we're good, you know, because we were very naive at what the journey would be that, you know, I'll talk about in a second, but like we were very naive. We thought it was just like, this is science. This is easy. This is like matter of fact. You go in, you fertilize these eggs, you have a baby, you're done.
Right.
And oh yeah, we thought it was going to be so simple and it has been nothing simple. But yeah, so we went in and did that. And so that's another thing that like, I think is really important for people to realize, like at the time when you get a stage 4 colon, stage 4, any kind of cancer diagnosis, your oncologist, their priority at that moment is maybe not to think about your fertility or your, you know, and that's like something so important for a lot of women. And so it's just something I really wanted to put out there. And I want the universe to hear that, you know, please talk about it, go to your OBGYN, talk to them, let them know that they can be so helpful in like guiding you in those moments when you're not thinking clearly, you don't know what to do, but they might have some solutions for you.
I mean, thank God that you guys had the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is okay.
So now we're like jumping to that,
right.
But
yes.
So I guess I'll just kind of jump down that path.
So when do you start? So you have, it's 2019 that you started, like after you.
For what?
The fertility.
Family,
the family planning. What do we call it? I don't know.
Creating a baby.
Baby making?
Baby making. Yes, we'll call it baby making. So let's see. So I finished chemo in 2019.
Yeah.
We moved to Cincinnati in 2020, like summer of 2020. And we very quickly after we moved, we made a phone call to my fertility clinic up in Columbus. And that's something too that I never knew, and it will stick with me, is that when we made that, we did a Zoom meeting with him, and the Zoom meeting, the first thing he said to me is like, wow, like, I am so excited to be meeting with you. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, hi, doc. Like, good to see you too. And he's like, no, I don't think you're getting it. He was like, when I was harvesting your eggs, I called your oncologist, because obviously we were in communication because of the whole everything that you were doing. He was like, I called your oncologist and I asked him, I said, am I doing this for this girl so that we will actually use her eggs one day? Or am I just doing this to give her like a little bit of hope in this moment in time? And he said that my oncologist's answer was, everything will have to go perfectly right for this to ever become a thing. God. Which, right? Like, so then you're sitting there and they're like, oh, right. So you're sitting there, you're like,
trying
wow,
not to cry right now.
Yeah. You're like, wow, like, okay. That, I mean, really, I was really in the thick of it. So we started that journey in 2019. Again, I had 33 eggs. Nick and I did not want to fertilize all of 33 because we were wanting to try with all our embryos. Some people, just like everybody's got their personal opinions on that, but that was just like something that we kind of felt like we wanted. Hindsight, now I don't know if we did the right thing, but you never know. So we fertilized like 8 at a time or 9 at a time, thinking like, okay, if we get a couple, great. Well, we wanted 5 kids. So like, we'll.
And so for people who aren't super familiar, like when you fertilize, the fertilization process is no guarantee that each egg will fertilize.
Yeah.
So, and then once they are fertilized, then they have to sort of survive. It's like the blast process,
which is like process. 5 days out.
Yeah.
And then for us, one thing that I had come to terms with before this step, like I had grieved my journey of what it would look like to become a mom, probably back when I was grieving, like being diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
Because I pretty much realized at that moment, after all the conversations we were having with my OBGYN, not really my oncologist about that, but what chemo and radiation and what my path was going to look like, as well as the fertility clinic, that I would probably never carry my own child.
Did they predict that it would put you into menopause and that's how you got there?
No one ever told me that. And I honestly don't think I even realized I had gone through menopause until like last year.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't say that.
I also don't understand.
I shouldn't say last year.
Menopause. That's like,
I always thought that like it had done all this stuff to me, but everything would go back to normal.
You were just waiting to reset.
And I just kept giving it more time. Like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it just never did.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. Yeah. So I definitely realized I had gone through menopause, but I thought it wasn't like official menopause. Like, I thought it was like based because of chemo and radiation.
And regardless, they didn't tell you what was going to happen, but you had come to terms after enough conversations. You're like, I probably have to let go of this like traditional version of motherhood,
right?
Or becoming a mother, excuse me.
Yes. And I grieved that a long time ago, and I came to terms with that. I mean, it still hurts at times that like, I would love to carry my own baby and I would love to get pregnant naturally or normally, but like I grieved that a long time ago that I haven't really had to struggle with that much. Where was I going with that? But so with that, I knew that like this conversation with the fertility clinic would be, what are our next steps? Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so it was like, well, you got to find a carrier. So there's a difference between
wait, you had fertilized 8 at a time and that did not go well, correct?
Well, we did get,
you knew that you couldn't carry at that point.
I knew that I couldn't carry at that point. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I've never asked, and I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm stuttering a little bit because my husband will be like, you can't carry, but like, I think that's something I know because like I had radiation all in that area, right?
Yeah.
I had a lot of radiation all in that area and I had chemo, but also the side to that is that if I would to carry and then my cancer came back, those would be, again, heavy decisions you have to make.
Yes.
And so my husband and I have just chosen to do this route.
I think that's,
again, probably because I can't carry, probably everything's ruined down there that I couldn't carry. So I'm not naive to that, but also just the piece of, our baby is growing in this beautiful gestational carrier that we have. And there is just no concerns. Like there's not another thing weighing on us of like, what ifs, like those what ifs can be torturous. So we started our journey. We learned very quickly that, to your point, that just because you fertilize an egg does not mean that it becomes a strong embryo.
Right.
And because we were using a carrier, you have to do genetic testing on these embryos.
Right.
And I guess that's like a thing. If it was transferring into me, I wouldn't have to, but because I was transferring it into someone else, the fertility clinics, at least that we worked with, basically said like, you need to do genetic testing.
Even if you're transferring into you, like that wasn't offered to me. But I would want to do genetic testing if that was a thing that we could do now. Cause I mean, you go through so much to get to these babies and you want them to be as healthy as possible.
Yeah. And I also want to clarify that like genetic testing doesn't mean that we're looking always for like issues downs for the baby.
Yeah, right.
What they're looking for to create a strong embryo is like the likelihood that it would take when you transfer. Yes. So I do want to be clear on that. So like, it's just because you do genetic testing does not mean that you're looking for specific things. It also can mean that like, they want to make sure that it's the strongest embryos to be able to transfer.
100%.
And in a situation when you're working with a carrier, like, we are, this is a very invasive procedure and you're asking someone else to go through this. It's also incredibly expensive to go through all of this. So you want to know all the information. Yeah. So not only do you fertilize and hope that you get embryos out of that, because you do not get embryos out of all of the eggs that are, I mean, I guess you could, but it hasn't happened for me.
Yeah.
And then you go through the genetic testing to see if you get strong embryos and healthy embryos. And so then you can end up with nothing. And that did happen a couple of times. It did happen where we got strong, good embryos. And we are on our 4th carrier that we have talked with. And I think you said 2 in the beginning, and that's because we've done transfers with 2.
I see.
The first 2 for a variety of reasons. And I'm just not, I guess I could get into it, but I'm just not. But
that's fine.
The first 2 we never did a transfer with.
Yeah.
So the process of a carrier, I'm also now getting everywhere, but a process with a carrier is you have to find a carrier, which is so difficult.
Is that with an agency?
We worked with an agency in the beginning and had a horrible experience. And the reason why I say we have a horrible experience is the lady was very, very nice. But it was very frustrating because you sign and pay this agency money. And then what they do are supposed to connect you with a carrier. But it was frustrating on our end because what a carrier has to go through is a psychological, and then you have to do, and their partner has to go through a psychological. And then Nick and I had to go through psychologicals as well.
Yeah.
And then you have to go through a psychological, all 4 of you. Well, the experience with this agency was one of the individuals that they linked us up with, her partner did not pass the psychological. So it's frustrating because I wish that agencies, and if any agency is listening to me talk, like do that screening before.
Do the due diligence.
Yeah, do that before you connect them with me, because that was like just another like deflation,
Absolutely.
And
you had hope.
Yeah, you had hope, and then it's deflated. So then you're like, great, here we go again. So then the second individual that we connected with, she had a health issue that popped up like the day before she was supposed to start treatment. Like we had already gone through psychologicals.
Wow.
And, we're paying for this stuff. So,
100%.
You pay for her psychological or her and her husband's, and then you pay for all 4 ours, and then you pay for all 4 of us. And then you have to go through legal contracts. And that is not a simple process. I'm an attorney, but like, goodness gracious, I could not do those. So you go through legal process and you create contracts and you pay for the legal fees and all of that for both sides.
Oh my gosh.
And then you pay for all the medical, appointments and all the stuff leading up to that. And the day, it's pretty much the day before she was supposed to, maybe not the exact day before, but like right then. So those were our experiences with the agency, which I learned a lot during that time. Like I learned so much during that time, which I'm so grateful for, but it was so frustrating. And the other thing I learned too is like, yes, they give you and tell you what to do, but you still have to do it. So this has like really become like a full-time job for me for the past few years. And I'm so grateful and so lucky that I had a husband who was so like encouraging me, like whatever you need, like you do, like it's definitely, he's been part of it, like he's side by side in this whole journey, but like I was able to take the lead on this 100%. And that's very much my personality. And I'm also like the one that wants to be like, he wants to be a dad too. I'm not trying to say that, but like this is like, I was taking the lead on this. And so I have just put all my heart and soul into this. So as we're going through all of this, like you're fertilizing eggs, you're doing all of this. So then we got connected with this other carrier who she was amazing and so sweet. I can't say enough positive things about her. But she did a couple transfers for us. And one had a miscarriage and the other one did not take. So at that time, our fertility clinic said like, you need to look for another carrier. So we start the journey all over again. And a family friend introduced us to a carrier who was working with an agency down in Texas. Because at this point, Nick and I are like, whatever, like we are now working with it, going to be working with an agency down in Texas. 100%. And that's something that I think a lot of people also don't realize about, like, you know, it doesn't have to be in your area. Like you can work with people all over. Nick and I had met with a fertility clinic out in LA. Like, I mean, cause we were getting down to I'm jumping on that, cause that was when we were getting down to like our last embryo. So we were talking with this agency in Texas. My mom is a really good friend, had known someone who knew a carrier who worked through this agency. Well, I wanted to get a referral based on our last experience. I wanted to get a referral before I signed the dotted line for this agency. So Nick and I FaceTimed with this girl and she was amazing. She was so sweet, so wonderful. And we were just wanting the reference for the agency. And she reassured us she had a great experience. Bless her heart. She was like, no, I'm just not wanting to carry again. We're like, oh, no, we totally get it. Like we totally get it. So Nick and I do another Zoom with the agency down in Texas. And in the meantime, I then get a call from this girl and she says, hey, my cousin, she is interested in being a carrier. And I told her about you guys. Well, she said for the right couple, when I was carrying, she would do it. And so she said like, I really should have called the carrier before I got on here to see like if I could use all her personal information. But I'm just not, because I didn't talk to her. So she's amazing. She's wonderful. She's local. She's all the things you could ever want in a carrier. But so we met her and her husband at a brewery and Nick and I just sat there and chatted. She went to the same college as us. We have like different connections. And long story short, she signed we went through all the due diligence that you have to do, the psychologicals, the legal and all that stuff. And then she did 2 transfers with us up in Columbus. And then I know I'm like rambling on here.
You're doing great.
But then she did 2 transfers with us up in Columbus. And the last transfer that she did with us was our last embryo that was like considered a strong embryo of my egg and my husband's sperm.
Yes.
So it was like scary, because like, again, we were so naive to think that like it was just going to be such a simple process. And here we are like 4 years later.
You're like, I beat stage 4 colon cancer. What's a little infertility? Totally.
Right? That's literally what our mindset was.
I
like
totally
it really was. Like we were like, oh, this will be nothing. Like this is going to just be we're owed this, right? Like we're owed this something to go simple and easy. And so she did the transfer and it didn't take. And that was November of 2023. So in November of 2023, we get the news that we used our last embryo. So that sent me into like a really dark space,
so much grief.
Yeah, because
my God.
Now I'm grieving something different. Like now I'm grieving like I want to be a mom, but now I'm also grieving like I don't like half of me is not, that.
Yep.
And so that was like a very hard, I don't even know how to put it into words.
It sounds so painful.
It was painful. And I think my husband got it, but I also think that females get it better.
I struggled getting pregnant and had to do all the fertility things too. And the only thing that I could say is that like, I felt, this is my personal experience, that I'm like put on this earth as a woman to be a mother. Like that is like what my body is called to do. Like that is what we do as a female species. And then to not be able to do the one thing that you're supposed to be able to do, that you're like literally put on this world to do, is to make babies.
Yeah, exactly.
You feel I felt like such a failure. I had so much grief. I was so angry, like a myriad of emotions. So to have that genetic component be taken away from you as well, I can only imagine it's like a whole different down gear.
Yeah. I'm really sorry you went through all of that.
Thank
and
you.
it's tough, and everybody has their different ways of handling it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm also, how old am I now? 37. Mm-hmm. So although time doesn't matter, it does, it's like, it does.
You still want to be a young mom?
Yeah. I don't want to be like 80. Anyone that is at college graduation is wonderful, but it's like, that's not what I wanted. Not what you wanted. That's not what I wanted, And so
many things of what you already wanted already had to have altered plans. And that's just so frustrating. Something so deeply personal, cellularly.
Right.
Yeah. I get it.
Right.
Completely.
And it's like, I used to think that I could like plan out everything, and I was very much in control of life. And like, that's been like the laugh of like, God's joke on me. Like, I think there's a saying, like, if you make a plan, God had like laughs or something. And it's like true, because he's been laughing at me a lot, because I've had a lot of plans that have gone a little off course, And that's like one thing that is cool that I've learned through this, is just kind of roll with the punches and like figure it out as you go. And I've gotten a lot better at that. It's taken a lot of time. But yeah, so we get that news, and I am just kind of beside myself. I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do? I've always dreamed of having a baby that I go to, which I had already, like I said, accepted like someone else carrying it, but I'd always dreamed of like this baby, and I'd know the carrier, and I'd go to every doctor's appointment and go through all of that and like get to experience all of that. And then the baby would be born and come home from the hospital with me. Mm-hmm. So Nick and I, bless his heart, we went and met with an adoption agency like the next week. Yeah. And it was a wonderful agency, and it was a wonderful experience. However, my heart was just not ready. Yeah. And I do like Nick and I our hearts are very much open to adoption. And it's something that we still think about today, and it's not off the table. But I just wanted that experience of bringing a tiny little newborn baby that was our DNA home from the hospital, and I wasn't accepting that yet, you know? And so I just wasn't ready to do that. Like, it was nothing, like the agency everything was wonderful. And it's, again, I'm still open to it, but in this moment in time, that's not what my heart was like desiring.
And I think I'm so glad that you said that. And I want people to like, that gives such credit to your ability to check in, and like, you've been through so much to be like, no, this is really where I am. And then if I think about the adoption agency, and I think about these kids coming home, like the adoption agency wants someone whose heart is all in for this particular scenario.
100%.
And you just have to honor your timeline. You know, that's not something that's not off the table, but at that moment, it's not what you wanted to pursue. And good for you for sticking to your gut.
And I think another thing that my husband pointed out to me at that moment is, like, when we were meeting with them, is like, rightfully so, the birth mothers can like deny or like,
it's like a 6 month.
It's like, there's like, I forget. I know I think it's 3 days, and then there's something else. But like, I mean, and my husband was like, we can't go through that. Like, we just can't. Like, I am not going to allow you to set up a nursery and like your heart be broken like that, you know, and that happens. And I understand completely why it happens, but I was not ready to stomach that at the moment. Like, I just couldn't.
I totally get it.
So I was just in this loss of a world in the moment, like, again, just not really knowing what to do, but never. And this is like back to our theme of like, just never give up, just keep going and just keep putting that foot forward. And one day, very west side of us, I live in the same neighborhood as my sister and now my brother.
I'm learning that is a very west side thing. I love it.
And it's amazing.
You guys are a tribe.
Yes, we're very much a tribe, and I'm very grateful. But one day I was at my house, and I was crying to my mom and my sister about like, I just don't know what to do. Like, I don't know, poor me probably.
Yes.
Like, you know, it was probably poor me, which I'm not proud of all those moments that I've had that thought process, but you know, I just was not happy. And my sister looks at me and she goes, well, I could donate eggs to you. And it caught me off guard.
Never even considered it.
Never crossed my mind. I had considered, Nick and I had talked about, you can get
egg donor.
Sure. Like we had talked about that.
Yeah.
I never once considered talking to my sister. And I don't know why. Like I really don't. I don't know why, because I mean, my sister is amazing, right? So it's not anything like that, but I don't know if it's just because she has a 2-year-old. She's creating her own family, so I don't know if that's why my mind never went there. Is like, Becca's like, I don't know. Like, I honestly have no answer of why I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And when she said that to me, I mean, as you can tell, I have I have the gift of gab. I love to talk. And so like, I just didn't know what to say. And
Speechless.
I was so caught off guard. Like, wow, like, whoa, like, huge.
Well, cause you feel the weight of everything. You've sat in this for how long had you been trying at this point?
Like 3 years,
which it's 3 years of torture. Like, so you understand the gravity where she's like, you can have my eggs. And you're like, you understand what it's like.
But I don't even think I went there. Yeah. Like, I don't even think I didn't get dark on this one. Like, I was just shocked. Like, I just was like speechless, like nothing, no idea what to say.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Beck, like, thank you. But like, also doesn't seem right to say thank you. Right. Cause it's like so huge. And I was just like, well, did you talk to your husband about this? Like, and he was just, she was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. She was like, honestly, he thought about it. Mm-hmm. And amazing, right? Like if you knew her husband, like he's an incredibly amazing person and such a huge heart, but he's also that person that like, he sees things for as they are. So in his mind, it was like, well, she wants Jones and Schweeter, which are my maiden name and my mom's maiden name, DNA in her baby, and you can give her that. And I was just like, wow, like what selfless humans, right?
Truly.
Like insane.
Truly.
And so I just kind of was like, well, Beck, like, don't take my silence as like, I really just don't know what to say. But I said like, of course I got to talk to Nick. And when I went and talked to Nick, like that night when Nick got home or whatever, I just was like, hey, like, Becca was over here and, she said, and Nick looked at me and he was like, this is the first time I've seen you like be light and breathe. And like, he's like, I think we should do this.
Oh,
and it was just that simple.
Mm-hmm.
It was that simple. Mm. And so then I can't remember if I called my sister, if I went to her house, but like,
walk down 2 doors.
She's on the other street. So it's like, I got to get in my little golf cart and go to her house.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
But I could walk it if I wasn't so lazy sometimes.
No, I would be, if I had a golf cart option. Yes, please.
Yeah, my little nephew who's 2, he like loves the golf cart. So I get cool aunt points for that. But
so you carted yourself down there.
Yeah. And well, I don't remember how I said, let's do but my husband and I were going to Thailand for the 3 weeks in January. So right before we left, we made an appointment with IRH. Mm-hmm. And our experience with that was when we had the miscarriage with the other fertility clinic up in Columbus. Nick had a connection through Miami and a frat that got us connected to Dr. Awadawa over at IRH.
Yeah.
And bless his heart. And he is like the most amazing doctor, but like also such a kind person. He called and talked to us for like an hour the night that we had the miscarriage, just to talk to us. And this was before we were a patient of his. This was before he even knew our names, like nothing.
Oh my God.
And he just talked to us to say, because we wanted to say like, how is this fertility clinic that we're working with? Like, we're going through rapidly these eggs and like, like all this different stuff. And he just like gave us like calmness. And it was just, so when we started talking about like what you can, like what our next options were, it was like, okay, let's talk and go over there.
Yeah.
So Becca, Nick, and I made an appointment and we went over to IRH and we sat there and had a conversation with him, got all the information. We left to go to Thailand. And while we were there, Becca started all the process and the paperwork. And like, there's obviously things she had to do on her end.
Right.
And then when we got back, like we had to all go through a psychological together, which is very important. And I think very wonderful that they make you do those sorts of things.
Big decisions.
Yeah. Like at first, like I think in the beginning when we were even talking with carriers, it's like insulting because it's like, wait, you're telling me if I can be a parent or not?
Oh.
But it's not that. And it's like they want to talk to you and make you think of all the things that you may not be thinking of, which is like really important. Like one of which is like, well, when would you tell the baby that, it's not your egg, like it was Becca's egg? And I don't know, I can go into all of that too, but it was like, Nick and I always said like, we'll tell the baby like when they are in sex ed, like when they're talking about that kind of stuff. And very quickly, like the psychologist was like, well, why would you wait? And we're like, why wouldn't we? Like, I'm not going to talk to my kid about this, like when they're like 3.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, then you're making it a thing. She was like, if you read a book in the beginning and you just always let them know, like, hey, mom was really sick. It takes a seed from a mom and a seed from a dad to make a baby. And like, mom didn't have any more seeds. So your Aunt Becca knew that your mom really wanted you. And like really wanted you, and she would do anything like to help your mom, and your mom would do anything to have you. So your aunt donated her seeds, and that's how they got you. And your Aunt Becca loves you, and your mom loves you. Your mom wanted you so much. Your dad wanted you so much. And that's how, like, I mean, I'm very much like making that short, but so it's like little things like that you don't think about. And it's like the same thing with like carrying. Like, I will just make this something that baby girl always knows. Like, this is just not like, because how the psychologist explained it to us is that if you say like, okay, at the age of 14, we're going to like have this conversation. You don't know what's going on at the age of 14. Did someone in your life just go through something tough? Did someone pass away? Is she having struggles in school? Are they having struggles with friends? Like, you just don't want to add that. So you just make it a conversation.
Just a thing, just a part of their life. Yeah. I think that's amazing. And it teaches children that like everyone, like differences are beautiful, and that everyone's story is just their story, and that's it. Yeah, that's all there is to it.
That's it. And you just make it nothing. Like, it is what it is,
So your sister collects all of her eggs. How does that process go? Like, and then how many are we like, how many are we?
Yeah. So
fertilizing, etc.
My sister had to do the 2 weeks of shots. Yeah. So I, fortunately, being so close, I was able to go over there and help her with those. Yeah. And it's really cool. I did video some of them, and like my little nephew, although he's so little, he definitely started to get like, not that he got what was happening. Yeah. But he knew like Brittany would come over and give mom a shot, and he would like rub her little leg. Like, it was, I don't know. There are no words for all of this. But then she had her eggs harvested around last Easter. And I can't remember the number of eggs they got, but we have 2 embryos, one of which has been transferred and one that is still in waiting. Yeah. So our journey to find another carrier has already started. But yeah, so we have another embryo that we would love to transfer as well. Yeah. So it was very successful.
Very successful. Yeah. Baby is coming we're getting close. Right?
I know. And that's why I keep saying like I kept pushing off like talking with you, because I just did not want to jinx anything. Yeah. And I am just so comfortable and so happy. I'm like floating on air. Like, I am ecstatic. Like, I am just embracing all the pink. We're having a little girl, and like, I'm just like loving life right now. And it's just like, feels so good to be so happy and like, so just at ease of where we are. And like, we got here, and our due date's March 12th, but they said they would induce our carrier on March 5th. So if not before then, March 5th, our little one will be here. Oh my God. I know. And before we stop talking about my sister, I also want to share like another little God wink that is so cool. So we did our transfer on June 25th, and then you wait 2 weeks to find out if the transfer took. So on July 8th, we knew we were going to be getting a call saying if the transfer took or not. Yeah. And I get this call, and it finds out, and it was positive. It was great. It was wonderful. So first call was, of course, my husband, and I tell him. And then I think I actually jumped in my car to go to her house. Like,
not the cart?
No, because I just wanted to get there. Yeah. And I run in, and I just am like telling her like, it worked. We're pregnant. It worked. And bless her heart, because she just was so happy for us. And so then the next day, my nephew is knocking at my door, which, he's like my heart and soul. I love him so much. And we're like we're besties. Yeah. And so it's not abnormal for him to be knocking on my door. Yeah. They stop pretty much every walk that they take. And I open the door, and he hands me a book, and it says, I'm going to be a big brother. Oh. Right. Aww. And so come to find out, my sister, so our due date is March 12th, and my sister's due date is March 21st. So it's just like the number flipped. And my poor sister was like, yeah, I was really praying that you had a positive test, because I did not want to have to tell you that I was having a baby. I mean, you weren't. I hope to goodness that I would have handled that with such grace and excitement, because I would have been thrilled for her.
Of course.
But it would have just been like a little hard.
It's very hard. Yeah. I will never forget like being so happy for a friend that they got pregnant and just absolutely sobbing as soon as I
and I think
phone.
that's also something really important is I think people assume all the time that you can't hear the news or you don't want to hear the news or that you're going to have all these big emotions. And it's not that. Like, no, it's really, I mean, it is in the sense of like, but you are so like, I can truly tell you that like, I have been so ecstatic and so happy whenever I hear about a little baby, right? Like always, like always have I always been so happy about that. But you can still be happy about that, but then also still like have that ache in your stomach of like, I just can't wait for my day.
Two things. One of the biggest pieces of like my healing journey is that two things can be true, right? Like it's not so black and white, which I just never really had opened my mind to that before. And so two things can be true. I never want to miss a minute of someone having wonderful news, but that doesn't, and I can genuinely be so truly happy.
Yeah.
And then also have my moment of being just genuinely sad for me. And those are two really like very oceans
separate.
apart,
very
separate things.
Very separate, but it's just part of the process.
Part of the process. One of the things that we had talked about in the kitchen, again, we should have been mic'd, was that we had talked about that healing is not to be able to handle more hard things. Healing is to be brave enough and to have the capacity for joy and for happiness again.
Yeah. When you said that, like my stomach dropped. I had goosebumps. I had all the feelings because it was like, wow, that is really where I am right now. That is really where I am. And I've worked
so happy.
Yes, 100%. And it's like, I'm not just saying that. Like, I think it's just like one of those things. It's like, I don't know. When you said that, I was like, that's a great way to think of it. Because I will say that when I had that bad news about my last embryo last November.
Yeah.
So I went into that really dark space. And so then that was in November. So then January comes around. And like, it's not fair for other people that are in my life for me to be like Debbie Downer all the time and just be like so upset. I would hope that they can understand like my moments and like what I'm going through. But at the same point, you got to pull yourself out, not for always for other people, but also for yourself.
100%.
So I went into 2024 saying like, this is my year. Like I'm taking back like me, like I've lost me in like this journey of all the fight for the past 9 years. Like I'm taking back this journey for me. Like I'm going to make changes.
You're going to write your own story.
I am. There you go. Yes.
That's why the show is called this.
Yeah. And it was like, so last year I really did. I started at a new gym. Shout out to my fitness suites over on the West Side. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I started at this new gym. I had randomly been told about it by a neighbor. I have fallen in love with their classes. I have fallen in love with the upbeat. So it became a thing. So I was never like completely out of shape or, you know, all those things, but goodness gracious, like, do I feel like my best self today? Like I'm strong. I am like, I feel good.
And so, all those chemicals have such a vast effect on your mindset.
Yeah.
It's a great place to start.
Right. And so I started doing that and I became very like, I told myself I'm paying for like this package. I'm going to make sure I go to this amount of days. I stuck to it and I still have like,
you went to the gym before you came here. I was like, girl, I climbed back in bed with a cup of coffee.
Yes. But I thoroughly enjoy it. The other thing I did is like, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I had always been against wearing, like kind of wore the like tester on my arm.
Is that the thing that like,
the Dexcom,
okay.
It like tells me my blood sugars and it tells me to my phone. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But I had never really worn it consistently and I had not worn a pod or a Omnipod, like a pump since I was in high school. I wore it briefly then. I just always hated all these gadgets and feeling like a robot for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't feeling like my best self. I knew my numbers were like going high, low, all these different things. I just had never been consistent with it. So I started with a gym. I went to these doctors. I wear religiously. I can't even think about not wearing both the monitors. I wear the pump and I wear the Dexcom telling me my blood sugars. So I'm on like a roll with that.
Yeah.
And then the big thing that I kind of touched on earlier is how I was 28 and like started going through all the hormonal stuff, which led to me going into menopause. So I looked into hormone replacement therapy.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so that has been a journey, not an easy one in itself. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's just like
just something else to figure out.
Right. And it's like, so I'm actually, in the process of changing doctors, but Yeah. So that's something else. So it's just like all these things and like it all lined up. And so I just kept saying yes, kept saying yes, kept saying yes. That's like when I saw yours, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I haven't shared all this stuff. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to say it. I'm going to help some people. There's a reason I'm still on this earth. And that's like the one component I don't really know right this minute.
That's okay.
Is like, I feel like everything else is like flying high. Like I'm riding good. I'm doing so well. It's like the one thing that I'm still trying to figure out, like, what is my bigger purpose here on this earth? But to go back to that day by day, like yes. I literally have just said yes and taken it step by step. And if you would have told me where I was January of last year, that I would be sitting here January of this year, feeling this good physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that stuff, I would be like, nah, no way. There's no way that happens in 1 year. Yeah. And wow, like, wow. So not only do I have this little baby girl coming, but it's like, you know, I just feel so grateful that like all of this has really lined up.
It is like, I have tears in my eyes and my smile is just enormous because like from the inside of my body out, because the universe works and God works in this amazing way where, you know, when I think about your purpose and your feeling of like, I don't know it yet, it is like slowly unfolding.
Yes.
This is the biggest component of your life. And I've learned, because I am similar to you. I was like, watch me crush everything, push harder, like be the most perfect version of myself. And then I gave up on all that. And the best things, the most amazing things in my life have come at a slow pace. And so now it's like an inside joke between me and my God winks to be like, no, I'll wait.
Yeah.
I'll just have an open heart. And like you said, keep saying yes to what feels right.
Yes.
And just keep showing up each day.
I'm not a patient person. So this has been like the toughest of lessons to learn. Like such not a patient person. But I do think too, like just to throw it out there is like, if anyone's listening, it's like truly things, I hate this saying, and I know it's like really cliche, but it's like things do happen as they're supposed to happen. And it's such a cliche saying. I hate even it coming out of my mouth, but I truly believe that sitting here today, it's like, if I look back, none of the things that happened or didn't happen when I wanted them to happen were meant to happen. Yeah. Because now I can look at things and it's, as I just said, like I sit here in such a good place, physically, emotionally, mentally, like all the things. It's like, I can handle whatever's thrown at me right now because I'm ready for it. And that's what's fair for this little baby that's coming, you know, like I'm my best self as she shows up.
I was thinking that as you were describing all the things that you've done to turn yourself to feel like the best version that you really was always in there, but you've been able to find it yourself. Right. And this baby girl gets to come into the world with the most tip-top shape, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually mother. Like what a gift.
Yeah. Cause when you're going through the trenches of like all of it, like for those 9 years, it was just like fight every day, like 1 foot forward, but you have to fight for that next thing. I had to fight through the cancer, fight to get this baby. But it's like, I just can let my guard down now. Cause it's like, there's just like a happy, calm, peace, tranquility that is just there. And it is amazing.
And doesn't it give a different lens, going back to our intention of like, just keep going?
Yes.
Just keep going in this version, this like downshifted, peaceful, I'm going to show up for my life every day. I go to the gym before I go on a podcast to start stepping into my purpose, like a month before I welcome my baby girl. Like, but just keep going can also be that slow, peaceful, show up with confidence and with a ton of faith.
Right.
Versus we've also been the version of like, especially you, like I'm fighting every day. I'm forcing this last pill down. Like just keep going can take a lot of different versions, I guess, or look a lot of different ways. Maybe.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just like very much hoping that I can just keep going on this path and like with this mindset and with this clarity of like what I've been through and where I am now and how I got here and what steps I had to take or pursue. And, you know, it's amazing.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. This has been like one of those conversations where like the energy is just like the brightest, shiniest. Like you are such an inspiration and such a beacon of hope for so many people. And I know it is a big deal to share your story, especially you've had many moments of privacy and rightfully so. And I just feel so grateful and so honored to be able to help be a vehicle to get you out there.
Yeah, it's so cool what you're doing here. I've listened to a couple of your different podcasts and it's just like really cool, like what you're doing. I mean, I just couldn't help but reach out. And I'm so grateful that you said, yeah, let's just do this.
I'm so grateful that you reached out.
And that you were so patient. Because originally I was like, let's do this. And I was like, maybe not. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, that's okay. It's totally okay. I like, you know, life is going to life and twist and turn. And I want people to come here like ready. And I know it's a scary experience. Even when I get interviewed still, I'm like, no, I like being the interviewee better. Thanks. But like, so I know it's intimidating or whatever, but you, one, have just like literally nailed it, but also truly like your story is, I think it's going to touch more people than you can ever quantify or imagine.
I really hope so. And I just really hope that people realize like you're not alone, take it day by day. And heck, I'm always there if you want to reach out.
Okay. I think that's unbelievable. I love to end every episode just sort of like really ending on what we want for women. Cause truly like the impetus is really to encourage women to write their own story, to live their own authentic life, to tell their truth, to say it out loud. So when we looked through our favorite list, we talked about what are your hopes for women?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I had, but I think I think what my hope is that everybody thinks that everybody else has it all together and that like there's this perception of, you got to be a certain way, you got to handle things a certain way, that if you don't handle something, what might be considered like socially the best or the most elegant way, like don't get down on yourself, like just be your true self and just do what you need to do to get through that day. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, try to bring your best self out there, but just be real. And like, I think that a lot of people are going through a lot of things and that if you're just honest and open, and I know that's hard to do because like I said, I've never publicly put on social media or really any of this stuff. Heck, we just posted that we were having a baby like a month ago or something.
Yeah.
I've held a lot of it in privately, but like personally in my conversations, I would share with people because I do think it's like, that's how we all connect. Like we're all going through things. And it might not all be the same, but I hope that I'm able to take my experiences and help you in a way, and you can take your experiences and help me in a way. And if we all are just honest by what we're going through, like life's not easy. No. It's not like a walk in the park. Like, it's like life throws you things, but you got people around you that want to help if you allow them.
Don't you feel too, like when you say your truth out loud, you just feel lighter?
Yeah.
You don't have to carry it yourself, even if no one can fix it. Like back to what we were saying about like, do you want me to validate your feelings or do you need some help? Like just to like let the air out of the balloon a little bit and be honest and real is life changing.
It is. It is. And I just think if we can all like kind of realize that when we're interacting with each other, even like that random person at Starbucks or that waitress that you're like maybe not handling your table the way you want them to, you don't know what they're going through.
Right.
Like me who had hair and looked healthy and like looked, whatever, like I was going through hell, but like
fighting for your life.
But like people that I might've snapped at different times, like didn't realize that. And I feel awful for that now, but like, I hope that they were able to be like, well, maybe she's having a bad day,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I kind of try to keep that in my mind, and I've gotten a little better at it. I still struggle with it at times, but I've gotten a little better at it.
Well, and I feel like that kind of stuff is like a daily practice, right? We're all just marginally getting better at that one day, one deep breath at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's so honest though. And I so appreciate you saying that. The last thing I want to end on is that we had talked about, again, we should have been mic'd. But these are my favorite because it always sets up like the flow of the conversation. You had said, going back to like, if I really, just to kind of recap, you've been through, you have seen the darkest of times and been given the darkest of prognosis, both in your own health. And then when it comes to creating the family, which is like, you want to be on this earth, married to your husband, surrounded by your family as a mother.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all. And those are the biggest, most genuine dreams. But as you talk about sort of accepting your path and sort of riding it and this healing to be able to handle joy. One of the quotes that you had said is that I laugh without fear of the future.
Yeah. And that really, my friend gave me a frame that had that quote in it back when I was going through the trenches. And I liked the quote back then, but I was recently like rediscovered that quote and I was like, wow, like that is so true. Like laugh without fear of the future, because no one knows what tomorrow's going to bring. Like no one has an idea, but like enjoy today, laugh through the moments. And when you can laugh, like that's like, just don't take, goodness, that's just such a joy.
Right. It's such a beautiful opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that quote. That's why I was like, wait, we have to make sure that we
I could go on and on about like thoughts I've had of that, but it's just such a cool quote. Laugh without fear of the future.
Laugh without fear of the future. I think people are going to listen to that and be like, they're going to have those moments where they find themselves laughing or they find themselves afraid and they're going to choose laughter over fear. And
I think some people always say it too. That's like, if you don't laugh about it, you'll cry about it. So like sometimes choose laugh, but choose laugh. Laugh without fear of the future. Like embrace each day. Don't think about tomorrow. I know you have to think about tomorrow, but enjoy it.
Right. Enjoy where your feet are. Yeah. I love that. Oh, you guys, this episode is just like, I'm going to be thinking about it for days and weeks. And this is going to be one of the ones that I go back and listen to. If you know someone who is struggling in similar ways, or if you are someone watching from the outside, to hold compassion, share this episode with people so that, we can continue to spread both the strength and the compassion for these big, big, big life moments. And for just, you are heaping huge spoonful of hope for everyone.
You. Yeah. I really hope that everybody feels that, we're doing this. We're doing it. We got it. Yeah. You got this. Yeah. We all got this.
You got this. I love this. All right, you guys. Thanks everyone for listening. And we'll catch you next time. Well, that's the end of this episode, but promise me, you won't stop here with whatever it is you're feeling or dreaming about. I hope you leave today feeling empowered to live life just as you see fit. If this podcast was helpful to you, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I genuinely just want to help women live the life they dream about. So if this type of content tracks with you, subscribe to this podcast or visit our website, writeyourownsstory.co, to download digital courses or to grab a journal and a mug to just dream in and dream with. It's your life, lady. Do you. And just remember, I'm rooting for you and you've totally got this.